Are you one of those people that hate everything that you sew? You make something and you say, oh my God, what have I done? I've wasted my fabric. I'm going to throw that sewing machine out of the window. Well, if you feel that way, I know how you feel, and I have had to use strategies to overcome that. I want to go through all the things that used to set me back so that it doesn't affect you and you can bring the joy back into sewing where it belongs. First thing is comparison. If you're comparing yourself to somebody else, it's best to stop it now because it makes zero sense. They say comparison is the thief of joy, and it's absolutely true. If you're comparing yourself to Maureen, who's had her machine for the last 50 years and has been sewing consistently, and you've only had your machine for the last 4, well, that makes no sense. Stop it. You've got to sew in your own lane, sew to your abilities, take classes or whatever it takes to improve if you wish to, but comparison makes no sense, and that includes comparing yourself to people on Instagram or any other social network you may follow. I think sometimes taking a step back from watching other people and just doing what you want to do makes you appreciate your own skills more. Another thing I used to do, and I see people doing a lot, is speed sewing. Speed sewing only results in shoddily made garments, in my opinion and in my experience. I can't sew at speed. I could never work in a factory, and I don't treat my home like it was a factory. I have to slow the pace down. I'll give you a real life example. Once I was going to the work Christmas do, and I decided to make my dress. Good idea, I suppose. It was strapless, quite cute, floor length. I loved it, but I left to the last minute before I started sewing, so I'm down to the wire. The doorbell rings, ding dong, my ride is here. Is the frock finished? Of course it isn't. I'm sewing frantically, one last press. The iron was high, the fabric had a synthetic component. You know what happened next? Big hole, melted right at the top of the sweetheart neckline. The frock melted, I went into meltdown. Panic stations. Luckily, I always buy a little more fabric than I need. I managed to fashion a quick makeshift bow, put that on and keep it moving. But the stress was unnecessary. The drama was unnecessary. Keeping my ride waiting was unnecessary if I hadn't tried the speed sewing thing. So although I look back on it fondly now, I did look at that garment with different eyes afterwards and just think, oh, you're a pain in the whatsits, but it's not the garment's fault, it's me trying to speed sew when it's something I can't achieve. I also think speed sewing means the insides of your garment don't get the love that they sometimes deserve, and if you haven't prepared the inside of your garment, sometimes depending on the fabric, after repeated washings and wearings, it starts to look more like a rag than a treasured garment, and that can make you sometimes not like what you've produced. I think skipping the boring stuff can result in you not liking what you sew. And the boring stuff, I think we know what I'm going to say. Pressing as you go. Washing the fabric before you sew it, if appropriate. Basting pieces together to ensure accuracy. Spending a good amount of time making sure everything is on grain. And the biggest boring task I think a lot of people don't want to do is making a toile or a muslin. I think those are the key tasks that people skip over. I think skipping those tasks can result in you having a finished result that isn't quite what you wanted, particularly in terms of doing a muslin. I think the point for me sewing is I rarely got clothes that fit me perfectly in the store, because the store isn't sewing for me. They're sewing for a generic shape or size that may not even exist in reality, and I certainly don't fit into that category. So I used to sew to get things to fit. And if I make a garment and it doesn't fit the way I want to at the end, I don't love it as much as I ought to. It doesn't mean my sewing is particularly bad or my design ideas are bad. It just means it didn't take time to fit, or I didn't fit accurately. So I think missing out on doing a muslin is a major one. Pressing as you go, well, I think we've all been beaten over the head with that enough. We know that we're supposed to press our seams as we go to keep a nice, neat, finished garment, but an extension to that, pressing the pattern pieces. Do you press the pattern pieces before you lay them out if it's a paper pattern? Because pressing that ensures that the paper's accurate and you know your lines are going to match up properly. Or grain line, we know about grain line. If you're off grain, your garment's going to hang a bit squiff, and I've seen that even in ready-to-wear garments, so it's easily done. But taking the extra time to try and measure your grain lines accurately, I think helps make a better garment at the end. Basting, similarly, is for accuracy. I mean, everybody chucks a few pins in and gets on with it, but I think basting sometimes can be very useful, very helpful for really ensuring that things are matching up right and giving you confidence when you do that final stitch. So I think skipping the boring task may be why you're not enjoying what you make. Fabric choice can make a big difference. If you're asking a fabric to do something it's not naturally able to do, I think sometimes your garment can end up being a dud. For example, if you need something with a bit more stability to it and you're trying to use a flowy fabric, it may not work. Sometimes you may need under support, such as boning or something like that, and you haven't done it, that can be an issue. Or you try to make an outfit with something that's too sheer and you end up showing more of your body than you'd like, and then these things go into the scrap bin. I think that could be part of why you don't enjoy what you sew. Getting hung up on mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but how you overcome them is how you triumph. And it depends on what stage of the project you made the mistake at. I mean, an early mistake maybe could be rectified. A later mistake, such as your button holes not lining up perfectly, or a bit of a wonky top stitching, well, keep it moving and still wear the garment. Who's going to notice? I mean, if they're that close to you, they like you already. Also, I think some mistakes, if they're really bad, real humdingers, and they can't be rectified, then maybe you're going to have to refashion the garment. And it may entail making such a drastic change to the garment that you no longer feel it suits you, but maybe you could donate it or maybe give it to a friend. So those are things to think about. I think sometimes if we get too caught up in the perfectionism trap, it can make your sewing feel a bit ho-hum. Are you actually enjoying using your tools? Because I think it sounds superficial and silly, but the quality of your tools affects how you feel. And I don't mean just like expensive tools. I mean tools that actually look nice. Tools that when you take them out of the drawer, they make you smile. Tools that are in good condition. And that's partly down to yourself. Are you maintaining your machine? Are you dusting it, cleaning? Are you changing needles every so often? Changing needles for the right project? I think sometimes the quality and care of the tools affects how we feel about the process as well as the finished result. Nice rulers and marking pencils for your garment make a big difference, to me anyway. Boredom. Are you just bored? Are you bored with your projects? Are you making similar things over and over? Are you afraid to go out of your comfort zone? Do you feel like you're a beginner when you're not really anymore? Maybe that's why you're getting bored of your sewing. Maybe that's why you don't like what you sew, because it's all a bit samey. If that's the case, maybe it's time to take a leap and go into something unknown. Try a pattern that's maybe a little bit higher than the skill you think you have now. You can always practice on the muslin that we mentioned earlier. Or maybe you just need to make something different. Maybe you're always sewing garments and maybe you could sew something different, a bag or something that you don't have to wear, something for home decor maybe. I think sometimes a change is as good as a rest. And speaking of rest, if you're not enjoying your sewing or you've lost your sojo, it's not a crime to take a step back, put the sewing machine away, do something else, do another craft that you enjoy or another activity. Sometimes a break from something that you're no longer loving is a good idea. So let me know if any of these scenarios resonate with you. I mean, I've experienced all of these and I've worked to overcome them. I don't like wasting fabric. I don't like discarding things if I don't have to. So I try my best to make sure that I get a happy result out of what I've made. It doesn't always end up that way. Sometimes if something can fit beautifully, but you still don't love it on you when it's done in the fashion fabric. But I think doing the boring stuff, this pressing, the basting, the pressing of the pattern pieces, the muslin, I think the boring steps help get me to a result that I like. So if I've missed anything off, of course, sound off in the comments, let me know. If you're currently not loving what you sew, have a moan, let me know all about it and we can work through it. If you've got any value from this video, please let me know in the comments and subscribe if you haven't already, and see you in the next video, which is about how I get inspiration for my sewing projects. So something sensational. Till next time.